Good evening, everybody, and welcome to a special edition of our On the Sofa on Monday night panel. We're very privileged to have both Alex and James from the Trust on this evening. They've had a bit of a day of it in a court all day or via virtual screening, but still a bit of a hard day for them. So we're very privileged to have them. First of all, I'm going to bring Vic on, our host as usual. Hi, Vic.
Hi, Chris. How are you? You okay?
You?
Yeah, I'm
Good.
all right. Thank you very much. Yes, thank you.
Good. Fantastic. So if you have any questions for Alex or James, please put them into the comments. We'll get through as many as possible, but please be aware that there might be some that they can't answer at this time, but bear with us. Okay, so I will bring on James and Alex. So, hiya, James.
Hi, Chris. Hi, Vic.
And
Hi,
hi,
James.
Alex.
Evening, guys.
All right.
Evening to you.
Okay, I'm going to leave you now in Vic's capable hands, so I will speak to you later.
Chris, thanks very much indeed. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for joining us this evening. And I know you want to go lie down in a darkened room very soon, and we're aware of that. And why wouldn't you do, quite frankly? Been a long day. I would imagine that the legal teams have known it's been a long day. So let's start really with the bullet points, because that's what we need to know. From your missive that you gave out just a little while ago, it seems that it might be going in Axis's favour, but there's always a but. Alex, what do you want to say about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks very much, Vic. I think, first of all, it's probably very worthwhile just stating that neither James nor I are legal experts, and we were supported, or always are supported, during these hearings by James, who supports our trust board from a legal perspective. He's a partner at Cooley's. We are still actually dissecting all of the information that came out as a result today, but from the perspective of a fan, it actually feels a little bit more positive, like there might be some light at the end of the tunnel. There were a couple of points today that we maybe believe that there might have been a decision or an outcome that came as a result today. But that's not necessarily happened. And what has occurred is effectively the court and the judge has decided that Lee Power has effectively agreed to sell all of his shares in Swinton, which is one of the companies which holds the shares for Swindon Town Football Club. He's effectively agreed to sell all of his shares in Swinton and therefore to Axis. And today's hearing was actually to determine whether there was a legal right for Axis to almost force the judge to kind of tell Lee Power to transfer those shares to Axis and for Axis to own 100% of the football club. However, the court has kind of decided not today to order Mr. Power to transfer those shares. And that's potentially going to be dealt with in a future hearing if Lee Power doesn't voluntarily transfer those shares. So from a trust perspective, it's our stance that we believe Lee Power should be doing the right thing and actually voluntarily transferring those shares over to Axis Football Investments, so Clem Morfuni and his team can take charge of the football club and kind of get us back to operating. James, I don't know if you want to add any more into that kind of top level situation.
Yeah, no, that's a good summary, Alex. I think there was a couple of extra things, really. I think the starting point for this was a few weeks back, where actually Mr. Power tried to actually sell his shares to Able, majority of them to Able, with a small extra holding for Axis. Axis obviously then found out about this and ultimately said, hang on a minute, we're as existing shareholders, there's certain rights that we've got, which are called pre-exemption rights, which ultimately means that they get first refusal on any further purchase of shares if Mr. Power decides to sell. So in essence, that's where a lot of what kind of happened today came about from, because Axis said, if you are going to sell them, Mr. Power, you need to sell them to us first. So as Alex said, the judge essentially said that that's valid, that statement, and ultimately the shares should be sold to Axis. Obviously, it didn't happen today, which is going to be it's going to kind of go to an additional hearing. One of the reasons for, I guess, the delay on them not being actually sold immediately today is the judge wants to basically acquire some additional evidence from Mr. Power, and he's been very specific about what he wants, for him to prove that ultimately he can fund the club up until at least September. There weren't any kind of evidence or documents given to court today for anything, bank statements or any other kind of statements on income or like a business plan for the next kind of few months. They've only got documents up until January, so the judge has specifically said he wants more evidence to prove that Lee Power's got the funds to kind of fund the club, so it doesn't go under ultimately in the time that he remains in control. And one of the key things that effectively Lee Power's legal person said was that Mr. Power is actually, as we all know because it's been in the press, has actually recently sold his stake in Waterford, the Irish club, really, and that was given as a reason for him to be able to focus on ultimately Swindon Town and making sure that the funding is there to ultimately fund the club until he is no longer the owner. So, but there was no evidence of any of that in terms of what he got from that, or how much money that frees up, etc., etc. So, what they've effectively said is by a week Friday, so a week, I think it's the 25th this month, Lee Power's got to provide the judge with the documentation evidence on his current financial footing and what income's coming into the club and what's going out, etc., and what the plan is, so that the judge can make a decision then on the kind of current status. So that was pretty much the only other thing really. I think I think in summary it was a really good it was a long day, but it was a very good move forward in the right direction towards Axis ultimately owning the football club. We believe that Axis will get the shares. It's the key thing is it's not if, it's more like when. How long is it going to take? It could be a few weeks, it could be go until September, until the next until the kind of major case, but at the moment we can't tell because of obviously elements that's still outstanding around that the judge has asked for. So
okay, thanks very much for that, James. I was going to ask you about the June the 25th, but you've explained that and what that all means, because I think he said there was going to be a hearing in the next couple of days or next few days after that, wasn't there? So he wants to get this done pretty quickly. Right, yeah. Questions are coming in already, and we mentioned, Alex, before we started this, the subject of debentures, and I'll ask you to sort of talk about that. Excuse me, I'm a bit hay feverish today, so apologies for that. This is from Lee, but I don't think it's that Lee. But the question says, why would Lee Power have purchased the debentures? Seems a bit odd to buy the debts, as he would see a revenue come through to him. Now, can you explain the debentures? Because you've done that in your document very well, but if you could just explain that for us.
Yeah, so there were some debentures against the football club which were outstanding to previous owners, and we believed them to be of a kind of total figure of around nearly £3 million. What we also believe subsequently is that Lee Power has purchased those debentures from the owners of them at a significantly reduced rate. So the debt to those owners is now effectively gone. That transfers to Lee Power. In order for him to obtain those and purchase those, he took out a personal loan against the football club. And what he's actually done is he's charging the club interest on those at the full market value. And the interest on those is around 6%, I believe, which over the course of a year is Lee Power actually generating about £170,000 out of the football club to himself, which equates to about 14k a month. So as a result of these debentures, he's actually making money off the interest which he's charging the football club. I'm not 100% sure when he purchased those, and that information around the interest being charged against the club has only come to light as a result of Colin West QC bringing that in as evidence on behalf of Axis Football Investments.
Right, this is from Matt. Top work, guys. I bet you rather have been sat in your pants eating a Solero, there are other ice creams available, rather than watching a hearing all day. Legends. So, Matt, thank you very much indeed for that. Now, here we are then. This is from Dan. Is Lee Power's control on Swindon Town Football Club much weaker now after today's hearing? Well, actually, as we stand, James, he's still in control of Swindon Town Football Club. That's right, isn't it?
Yes, he is. He's still in control of the club. Obviously, had the judge decided today that the transfer of shares had to occur immediately, then he wouldn't have been. Axis would have been in full control of the club. But the judge decided, obviously, as we've said, to delay that decision. So he is still in control, but ultimately he is in a lot weaker position now because, the judge has stated that, Axis are quite within their rights to now purchase those shares from him, that so they own 100%. So he's in a lot weaker position. Yes, so he's clinging on a little bit, but he's in a lot weaker position than he was prior to the hearing.
Alex, what about Able? This mysterious group called Able, who I would dearly love to talk to them, and if they're there, come on, I'm happy to do it. But where do they stand now? Because it seems to me that they're shifting further into the distance. Is that fair to say?
Again, we don't actually know anything about Able. We've heard two names mentioned in court previously. We've seen one name written down with regards to the letter of intent from, maybe 2019. As far as we're concerned, or as far as we know, Lee Powers is still preferred purchaser of his shares and of the club, is Able. He is still kind of trying to force that route as best as he can. He still is very against this whole, potential deal with Axis Football Investment. He doesn't trust Clem Morfuni. But in terms of Able, we're still no clearer who they are, what their intentions are, why they want to purchase the football club, what their short-term, medium-term, long-term plan is, what they'll do on day one, what they'll do on day 365.
But are they still in the race? Are they still in this race as far as the judge is concerned?
As a result of what we heard today, I don't think so. And I think it feels to me personally very clear. And I think James touched on this earlier on, that it is a case of when, not if, Axis Football Investments gain 100% control of the holding company Swinton and thus Swindon Town Football Club. I don't really feel like Able have much of a say in this situation anyway.
No, I mean, okay. There were two numbers on the call today on the court case from Austin again. So we assume those are they're Able. It was the same as previous hearings, but yeah, as per Alex's point, I don't think their positions got incredibly weaker.
Okay, this from Jamie Newton. Hi to you, Jamie, a member of the panel, of course, from time to time. How long is Lee Power given to turn over further evidence the judge asked for? Well, I think we've answered that earlier, haven't we, James, with the 25th of June, which is a week Friday. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay. So I hope that answers that question for you, Jamie. Right. This is from Jason, and I'm going to also throw this question in as well. So bear with me. Jason says, are the trust still going to boycott season tickets? And this from George, who sent me an email. How is the financial side of the club progressing without any season ticket money or any prospect of it? And how is it now being funded? Is the money currently being spent putting the club further into debt? Which ones of you wants to take that one? And indeed, Jason's question. Let's take Jason's first, because that's a simple one about the boycott.
Yeah. So I mean, from the perspective of the trust, we are still, standing firm around our boycott at the moment, and we firmly believe that, no money that goes into the club, there's no power for Lee Power. I think we will remain on that stance until we see a change of ownership and until we see new and positive engaging ownership with Clem Morfuni. So as things stand, we will, absolutely still be taking that stance. And that generates right through to merchandise and sponsorship and hospitality and all things like that. Again, what was kind of brought out in court from Lee Power's legal representation today was that he is firmly convinced that he has the means and has the funds to continue operating the club and funding the club at least and through till September, which is potentially this kind of full case hearing. But again, provided no evidence whatsoever of what finances he has available, where this stream of funding is coming from. He's just made it clear that he would like to fund it and he can fund it, and that he, loves this football club. We can assume that, part of the money he's using to fund it has come from the result of selling Waterford in Ireland. But again, the judge today asked how much that deal was and what was generated as a result. And unfortunately, Lee Power's representation once again just didn't have that information, didn't have that evidence to hand, couldn't even give us an idea of how many season ticket purchases there normally are. Couldn't even tell us if season tickets had gone on sale this year.
So as far as we're aware then, James, no. You see, to me, I'm quite a simple soul. You know, in the summer you sell season tickets, which means you fund the club through the summer and gets you into the new season. If that's not coming in, which I think is the basis of George's question, you know, it's a bit of a pickle, to say the very least, isn't it? So, you know,
Yes.
You could argue that a boycott damages the club further. Do you see the point I'm making?
Yeah, I absolutely do. I think what we have to bear in mind is, season tickets obviously haven't gone on sale yet. I would highly expect them at some point in the very near future to go on sale. So although they're not there yet, they probably will be pretty soon. Also, we have to bear in mind that, you know, the club gets quite a significant sum of money beginning of each season from the EFL for TV rights. Obviously, we're in League Two this season, so the amount will be lower, but still, that's a fairly significant six-figure sum. You know, there are other sources of income as well. You know, there's obviously the EFL loan that we had. We don't know if we spent all of that, which was for about 800,000 that he paid the wages with kind of last month. Whether we've got any of that left, we don't know. And there also are some operating, about 250 to 300k of operating kind of hardship operating funds in there, which Axis have put forward as part of the court case, which he hasn't touched allegedly as yet. So, you know, if things got really tough, then potentially that's available to him as well. So that, you know, there's a good significant million plus amount of money, even without season tickets, that could be used. But we do know that, you know, we have, because we haven't seen any up to date figures on the kind of the debt and the bank statements and everything else that wasn't provided today as evidence. We only got updates as of the end of January this year, and at the end of January this year, the club were, you know, effectively about 2.9 million in debt ultimately that it owed in revenue, EFL loan, various other creditors. So we highly expect that figure to have gone up. Obviously, we don't know what it is because we haven't been told, but it will be more than 2.9 million. But ultimately, you know, the income that I mentioned a minute ago, excluding season tickets, certainly will keep him ticking along for a few months. Yeah.
Okay. Right. Well, it's interesting because David Hume has sent in this question. What happens to the money coming in for the transfer of Twine? Well, you haven't seen any figures, so you can't really answer that, Alex, I guess, can you?
No, I absolutely got no idea on that, unfortunately.
No, fair enough. Okay. This is also from Lee. How can the shares be sold if there's also a legal challenge from Michael Standing? Now, I think I read, and please forgive me if I'm wrong here, but I think I read there wouldn't be a challenge from Michael Standing. Is that right, Alex?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, Michael Standing has this case with Lee Power with regards to whether he owns 50% of Swindon Town Football Club, and we have been led to believe that if the transfer of shares goes through to Axis Football Investments, that Michael Standing won't sort of get in the way of that.
Fair enough. This from Mai. Is Abel Lee Power in another form? Well, I guess, James, the answer is we don't know, do we? I mean, that's basically it. We just don't know. And it's frustrating, and we'd like to know what their situation is. As I've said, I'm quite happy to talk to them. You know,
yeah, you've got to think that when, you know, as a trust, we've asked for them to do the same as Clem Morfuni did and be open and honest with their plans and transparency. We've got nothing from them. You know, they've not come out at all, other than, like Alex said, a couple of names that we've been given that we've only learned through effectively the court case situation. So yeah, it's very difficult to know why Lee Power favours that you know, that route in terms of ownership. I know there were a few differences in terms of the deal, in terms of what they were offering, but you know, ultimately, as we've always said, you know, we always believed that Clem Morfuni's offer was the best one for the football club, and he's provided the evidence ultimately that he's got the monies to be able to run the club effectively, put money into bank accounts, etc. But we've not seen any of that really from kind of Abel. So yes, it's a big unknown, really. It really is.
Yeah, this is from Anthony. Has the Highworth training facility come up in court? Will it be part... Sorry, it just scrolled up at the wrong moment. Will it be part of the Axis purchase? Well, I think when Clem Mulfooney spoke to us, he said he had nothing to do with the Highworth training facility. So I'm guessing that's completely separate, Alex, to the football club, is it? That's a different thing altogether.
I honestly not 100% sure. No. James, okay. Do you have any context on the? It feels like the training ground's kind of gone under the radar the last the last couple of months. So that's something that we should definitely be looking into actually.
Yeah, it hasn't really. It's got the odd mention in the court case, but nothing of any kind of pertinent nature really. I think it was stated quite clearly, and I know Clem said this as well, that that's really between Michael Standing and Lee Power, nothing to do with him.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not really been something that's been discussed. I guess the September court case, which is the Standing versus Power, in terms of who owns what percentage, it'll probably be pertinent to that case, I would imagine.
Yeah, this is from Kev. What does Clem say about the boycott? Well, if I remember from our conversation, he said that's up to each individual person, up to the trust and the supporters club to do what they do. He says he doesn't want to see anything which hurts the football club. I think that, I'm paraphrasing what he said, and I think I'm pretty accurate in that statement, am I?
Yeah, I mean, even from our perspective as well, I've got no issue, and I will fully respect any individual who wants to purchase a season ticket, who wants to attend games. It's been a horrendous 18 months for a lot of people for a variety of reasons, and some people just want to get back to watching Swindon Town. I could totally agree with that. Obviously, we informed Clem Mulfooney and Axis of our intentions of what we were going to do and why we were going to do that. There wasn't a particular comment either way from their side around it, and I think they're very confident that as a result of them gaining 100% ownership of the football club, fans, the trust, the supporters club would immediately see a difference, an open change, positive change, and engagement, and actually, start to work with the fans and the local community. And as soon as we see that, our mood will shift from a no money, no power, boycott everything to finding ways that we can actually support Clem Mulfooney and the team that he decides to put in to run Swindon Town Football Club and help them as best as possible to hit the ground running. Obviously, there are a number of things that need to be cleared up behind the scenes. We've got the EFL Hardship Fund, for example, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's, I would imagine that would be Clem Mulfooney's, immediate priority. Get rid of that because it releases some of these embargoes around wages and transfers. But I absolutely have no doubt that the second part will be around engaging the fans, getting the local community involved, businesses, trying to create an atmosphere and a winning squad that has us, having those 9, 10, 11,000 people back at the county ground every other Saturday.
Yeah, he said his main priority would be to get a team on the pitch. And I think, with August nearly here, let's be honest, that is a priority. From Mike, James, were the Football League solicitors there and any worries on that count? Well, I think that's a separate issue, although, of course, the football club is all tied up with the Football League. It's a member of the Football League, for goodness sake, or an associate member, or it used to be in the old third and fourth division. Were they there? Were they in attendance?
Obviously, there was, at one point, I think there was only 60 people on the call. And, you can look at the names on the call. I must admit, the last case, because there was a specific FA, EFL element to it, with them bringing a case and asking for some input and what have you, and they wanted to understand a little bit more about what was going on. There were people from the FA and the EFL on the last call, but this one, no one was introduced from the EFL or FA. I didn't recognise any of the names, if I'm honest, that were on the previous call. So hard to say. Not 100% sure, but I don't think so.
Okay, fair enough. We should say, thank you for answering the questions you are answering, but you're going to do further, if I might use a phrase, due diligence over the next couple of days, aren't you, in terms of this hearing? Because this is very early days. In fact, I don't know how long ago was it? It finished about an hour ago, wasn't it? Well, it seems to me. But
yeah.
So just everybody who's watching this, and there are a lot of people sending questions, which I'm really grateful for. bear in mind that James and Alex have only had about 10 minutes to look at this. So, you know, we're doing our very best here they are. So brilliant. This is from Kenny. I will be attending every home game and buying a season ticket, as, in my opinion, a boycott will ultimately make no difference to the ownership outcome whatsoever. Will the trust respect and support my decision? Well, I think, Alex, you've already said that would be, you would. And will they make this known in any future correspondence rather than seek to divide supporters? You can see what Kenny's getting at there, because there are many of us, and I'm sure members of the trust as well, trust board, who are really struggling with this, because all they want to do is go and watch Swindon Town play football on a Saturday. And the last thing they really want to do is to boycott the football club, because we all dearly love the darn thing, don't we? Wish we didn't at times, let's be honest. So do you understand what Kenny's driving at there, James?
Yeah, I completely do. And I think your point about us, we've got absolutely mad fans. We're all fans basically from the trust. When none of us are, we don't get paid to do this. It's all voluntary, and we do it for the love of the club and wanting to do the best for the club. And ultimately, if someone said to me, normally would I boycott and not go to games, I would say you're joking. It's part of my DNA, really, being a Swindon fan. But I think at the moment, given what's happening, ultimately the only way really we believe as a trust that we can help accelerate Mr. Power's exit from the club is to demonstrate, through ultimately what he understands. He's already said he doesn't read social media, he doesn't read web articles. He's not really, that's not his thing. So he's not on forums or anything. So he's not getting that kind of feedback through that. But ultimately, if the attendance is at games, and he's still in charge when the season kicks off, and attendances at games are a lot lower than you would expect, that's going to hit him hard in the pocket. And that will ultimately, we hope, accelerate his decision to do the right thing and sell to Access Clermont-Ferrand. But it's a last case. It's the last thing we would really want to do, but we feel it's the only way we can demonstrate to him how the fans are anti him and very pro kind of Clermont-Ferrand. So yes.
I think also to add to that, James, as well, it was only 4 months ago that Lee Power was on BBC Radio Wiltshire telling us about his sleepless nights, and he doesn't want to put a penny more in, doesn't have the means to continue running this club. And it was at that point which we as a trust decided to put our open letter out there. Lee Power at that time gave, a number of options. One was selling the club, and the secondary was administration. Obviously, everyone wants to avoid administration. And the business entity who Lee Power sold 15% of Swindon Town Football Club to was in a position to buy the club. For reasons which still remain unknown, Lee Power wants to sell the football club to Able. We have approached Lee Power, the football club, Able, everyone who had a long-term interest in the future and the viability of Swindon Town Football Club. We created an open letter, a forum for an opportunity for them to come and speak to fans, come and speak to us. How can we help? How can we support? We asked to see management accounts and up-to-date financials from the football club to see if there's any way we could support them. Last year during the pandemic, we offered to run crowdfunder campaigns to help them financially. All of this was pushed back. The only individual, the only entity that actually came forward with a genuine scenario of how this club could be run sustainably for the next 5 years and beyond was Clermont-Ferrand and Access Football Investments. This is the guy and the entity that's had an involvement with Swindon Town Football Club and football in the UK since 2015, 2016. It's not like Clermont-Ferrand is just some random business guy that's rocked up and decided he wants to purchase Swindon Town. He has a financial investment in the football club, part with nearly £1 million for 15% of the business. And he has a clear understanding of the potential this club has and where it can take, where he thinks he can take it. We haven't had any of that engagement from anyone else. So I think it's just clear that the best route forward for the football club is Access Football Investments, with all of the information that we have readily available to us.
Yeah, we've also asked the football club if they'd like to come on to one of these on the sofa events. We've asked several times and they've said no. So we should say that. Dan says, if Lee Power doesn't satisfy that he can fund the club until September, can the judge then order Power to sell the shares to Axis. Is that your reading of what might happen post June the 25th? Because Ben says, excuse me, so maybe I've got it wrong, but will everything be wrapped up by June the 25th? That's the date when he wants further documents passed to him, isn't it? That's not the date when it'll be wrapped up.
The evidence has got to be submitted that the judge has asked for in terms of the financial position of Lee Power to fund the club by the 25th. So he's got to submit all those documents then. Then obviously the judge and others will then look at that, and then pretty soon afterwards, maybe not even a week after, maybe within a week, they'll then sit again and ultimately kind of go through that. So and to answer the original question, if Lee Power doesn't provide the relevant evidence to prove that he can fund the club, then the judge is quite within his right ultimately to push through the kind of sale to Axis. Yes.
Okay, lots of questions coming in. I goodness, how are we going to get all these in? I don't know. This from Stephen. Does Lee Power need to submit up-to-date accounts before he leaves? Well, I would imagine any prospective owner, Alex, would want to know the state of the club before he takes it over, wouldn't he?
Yeah, and there will be sort of legalities and processes and requirements from a company's house perspective. Standard legalities. Obviously, Clem Morfuni and Axis Football Investments have done due diligence on financials. That was a couple of hearings ago. They've seen the books. They're fully aware of the situation, yet still want to purchase the football club, still have provided evidence that they've got money onshore and offshore to kind of go. So I don't know the legalities around providing up-to-date accounts via company's house. Even if Lee Power does, historically, traditionally with all his businesses, he's done, the shortened version, condensed versions anyway. So we don't really get much information from them anyway.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, James, go on.
I was just going to say, just to add, I mean, Alex already mentioned, the company's house accounts for the club are already overdue anyway. They were supposed to have been delivered several weeks ago, and they're not there. So we'll wait and see, okay. I guess.
This is from Paul. Wasn't the training ground owned by a town fan and sold to the club for the club, not for Lee Power? I think this goes back to the Edie money, doesn't it? Is that right?
Yeah,
I'm not sure about the ground or the land.
No, Nigel Eady was a massive town fan. He basically left the trust a considerable amount of money. There's a group of them, the family that ultimately control that trust. They've obviously invested quite a lot in Swindon already in terms of the foundation and kind of seven figures into that. Yes, but in terms of the actual golf club purchase, Lee Power purchased that. And ultimately, that was very much him redeveloping that for the training ground and everything else that's on that. There was no kind of involvement from the EDs on that side.
Jason says the Able deal was being funded by William's father-in-law, who owns shares in Boston Celtic. Well, we've heard this Boston Celtics link before, haven't we, Alex? Confirmation or not?
Yeah, I don't know. I think I've seen a huge amount of information shared and some really good investigatory work from some fans who have managed to pull that out of the bag. Whether it's genuine or whether it's allegedly, I'm genuinely not 100% sure. Again, we've offered Able the opportunity to come and chat to us. We've heard in court previously that they have involvement in sports in the US. Again, the judge asked Lee Power's lawyer what sports, what teams, and she had absolutely no idea. So again, we're just left in the dark. But again, if Able are out there, I can't imagine they're listening. But if for any reason they are, feel free to give us a shout.
Sure. Boston, it's, let me see, 10 to 8 now. So 10 to 3 in the afternoon. So, hey, no reason why it shouldn't be. This is from Danny. So is it right in saying that Michael Standing will not seek any claim to the club if Axis purchase it? Seems odd. But what we were saying, I think, Alex, was that they wouldn't, Michael Standing wouldn't stand in the way of Axis buying the shares. That's what we said, wasn't it?
Yeah, so, Lee Power owns 85% of the football club. Michael Standing's claiming against Lee Power that he owns 50% of Lee Power's 85%. That potential question will be decided at a trial in September Obviously, Axis owns 15% of STFC, wants to become the 100% owner. We believe, or it's been brought to light that Michael Standard will not stand in the way of a sale or a share transfer of STFC to Axis. Why or what? I'm not privy to those conversations. I don't know what's maybe gone on behind the scenes. The legal representation of Colin West QC, who did a tremendous job again today in court, represents both Axis Football Investments, Clem Morfuni, and Michael Standing. So I can only imagine that they're very well informed behind the scenes there.
Sure. Right. Jamie says, does any outcome of court in Axis favour impact the FA charges of investigation into club? James, I would no, excuse me. I know in the way the FA works, I guess they'd still look into it, but it's whether a new regime would be part of that investigation or it would be purely on the old regime.
It's a tricky one to know actually, but I think it largely focus on the old regime, because obviously the new regime would have passed the relevant. Well, Clem has already passed the fit and proper.
The fit and proper person.
Whatever it's worth these days. I have a particularly good reputation, does it? Let's be honest. But no, he's already passed that. So I don't think the FA would look any further than that. They would go backwards, not forwards. One thing I would just did want to add as well, around the earlier question about the evidence and whether the EFL or FA were on the case today. Just to let you know that ultimately the FA are entitled to copies of all of the evidence. So if they wish to, they can request all of the kind of transcripts and all the documentation and evidence that's part of the trial. So even though they might not have been, I don't believe they were on the call today, they can get copies of everything. So obviously help them with their investigation if it is helping them.
Well, this is from Kev. Will the Axis takeover need to be rubber stamped by the FA and the league? Well, certainly by the Football League, won't it? I would imagine. Well, I don't know. Who knows with the Football League what happens? But I would imagine it would have to be.
It was stated today by Lee Power's representative that although Clem Morfini's passed the fit and proper, they stated that Lee Power stated that there was actually an additional classification for people that hold a majority stake in the club, because obviously at the moment Clem Morfini only owns 15%, so he had to pass the fit and proper for a minority ownership, but it came out that if he does take control, then he would have to kind of pass some additional majority shareholder element with the relevant powers that be. I haven't heard of that before, I must admit, and it was new to us. So as it had come from Lee Power, I'll withhold judgment whether that's the case or not. But it's not something I've heard of previously, but we will be looking into that.
Okay. Kevin says, let me buy you guys a drink when this is done and dusted. So there you are. You're up for a pint there. Well done. Karen says, what about the fans who'd purchased their 2021 season ticket? No mention of what's on offer to them. Well, that's really, Alex, for the club to come forward and say, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Before the trust was excommunicated by the football club, back in March, April time now, or May, whenever that was, we were in discussions with the football club about finding solutions around the season tickets. And we've run a survey, the club had run a survey, we were going to have discussions, the hearings came about, we were excommunicated, they don't want anything to do with it. We have seen nothing from the football club on, the outstanding situation of season tickets last year, what's happening for the upcoming season. We're none the wiser. There are some reports that are coming through from fans, and it's great that fans keep us in check with their comms that they're having with the club, because it's really useful for us to build up a picture behind the scenes. We have seen examples where fans have taken it into their own hands. They've contacted the clubs or contacted their credit card providers, and resolutions are coming that route. I've personally seen a response from the football club that suggests they're waiting for further guidance from the government around season tickets, which I've got no idea what route that was going down. And again, we mentioned this a couple of weeks ago. We're seeing so many other clubs up and down the footballing pyramid just taking a stance, looking after their fans, you know, supporting the local communities, meeting fans halfway, doing what they can. The fact that we just have complete radio silence from Swindon Town Football Club is an embarrassment and a real disgrace to the fans, especially after the year that we've been through. So if there is anyone at the football club who happens to listen to this, it would just be great to have a simplified, straightforward statement that's not in email inboxes, that's not landing in people's Twitter DMs. Just put a statement on the website, let everyone know where we stand, let us know when there's going to be a resolution, manage some expectations, stop leaving people in the dark. It feels very simple to me. I'm not 100% sure why we're even still having this conversation.
Yeah, sorry, James, you were going to say. No, well, we'd all like to know what's happening, basically, wouldn't we? Because you know, at the end of the day, we've stumped up money, and you know,
no, we absolutely would. We'd absolutely would, Vic. And I think I agree completely, 100% with Alex. It's a shambles, really. It's an absolute shambles, and it's a real slap in the face for fans. And I you know, I mean, yeah, I own 2 season tickets. But I know some people, and even within our trust group, that have got, you know, 4 or 5 for their family and heard nothing at all. You know, well over £1,000. You know, and it's just disgraceful. It really is. I know from some of the emails I've seen that from the club, they've said things like, "Well, waiting for government advice," but you know, I mean, this has been going on now for months and months and months, and there's still no comment. It's just a disgrace. It really is.
This is from Paul. Did Steve Anderson get put on the board just so Power could outvote Clem? Now, there was talk of a vote today, wasn't there, in court? Could you explain what that was?
It was basically a hastily arranged board meeting, which took place a couple of weeks ago, which basically involved Lee Power, Clem Morfuni, and Steve Anderson. And it was, I don't know the actual details of it, but it was ultimately to vote over whether they, I believe, whether they accepted the pre-exemption stuff, you know, around, you know, whether that was valid or not. I haven't seen the full details on it. We will get more information on it, but largely, yeah, it was essentially Lee Power. Like they lost. The vote went in favour of the club, you know, and so it kind of 2-1, which basically shows that Steve Anderson and Lee Power voted one way, and obviously Clem voted kind of the you know, the other way, really. But
that was part of the reason as to why all of this came out today, wasn't it, James? Because Axis was effectively coming in and suggesting that Lee Power has a conflict of interest and wasn't entitled to the vote anyway. So whilst the score was 2-1, Anderson and Power, you know, scored their 2 goals. Clem Morfuni got his 1. Axis actually said, you know, Power's got a conflict of interest, so the real score was 1-1.
So it went to VAR, did it? It was a VAR decision.
Yeah.
It went to VAR. So Axis issued that new legal claim that, you know, Power is now legally required to transfer all of its shares to Axis, and that was kind of how today sort of rolled out.
Yeah, and it was actually yesterday, the board meeting. Sorry, I was just going to say the board meeting was actually yesterday. I was corrected, so rather than a few weeks ago. So very hastily arranged.
Yeah. This from Connor. Amazing work, all of you. Just a quick viewing of this stream and a look at the article paints a clear picture. Fingers crossed the issue's put to bed soon. So there you go. I think we all want to know when it's going to be put to bed, because I think the thing is, you know, whether you are pro Clem Morfuni, pro Lee Power continuing, pro Abel, pro anything else, all you want to know is that the football club is going to go forward from here. That's all you really want to know, isn't it? And I think that is the problem right now, because we don't know this. We don't know anything, and we just want it to happen quickly, whatever happens, don't we?
I mean, we're talking about, you know, potential dates where this could all be a distant memory. And I mean, James, correct me if I'm wrong, but if Lee Power just does the right thing and effectively the writing that is on the wall, and transfers and sells his shares to Clem Morfuni and allow the sale of the club, we can all move forward. We can start building for the future. We can put this behind us. I mean, Lee Power could do that tomorrow, right, James?
Yeah, he could do.
Yeah, simple as that, really. So what are you? I mean, what are you calling for tonight? Let's get this sorted, boys. Get in a room and sort it.
We're just, like we put on our website article earlier than the summary of the notes. We are simply calling for Lee Power to do the right thing and to transfer his shares, sell his shares to Access, and do the right thing, and not to further prolong this any further. Really, we're getting notifications of pre-season friendlies in less than a month's time. And how many players have we got at the moment? 8.
Yeah.
Something like that. We haven't even got enough to field a full team. So I can't see, if he keeps on hanging on, how we're even going to get a full, the restrictions that we must be working under at the moment in terms of recruitment must be one of the reasons why we've not brought in many players so far. I mean, there might be a glut of them all ready to sign on July the 1st, but it's not ideal, is it? Not ideal preparation for a new season when you don't even have a team of, even 11 players. It's just crazy. It really is. And so I think, let's just get on and start enjoying football again. And please, Lee Power, please do the right thing and sell the club immediately.
I think that's what we all want. We just want to watch football. We want to go to those pre-season friendlies and think, do you know what, on August the 7th, we're all going to go and watch the Town play, whoever it is going to be on August the 7th. That's it, really. Right, gentlemen, thank you. We've been through all the questions. So I know you're keen to watch France against Germany for some reason. I'm not sure what. But you've got a penalty. Oh, he can't in the groups. But thank you very much indeed. And I know you've had a very long day, so I'm going to let you get off and sort of go and have something rather cold and relaxed for the rest of the evening. Brilliant stuff as always, Chris, from Alex and James. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, absolutely fantastic. Thanks, guys, for taking the time to. I know you've all we both had a very busy day, so thank you very much from the Supporters Club for actually taking the time to do this. We're all a bit more clear now of what's going on, I think.
I think we should say that over the next couple of days, Alex, you will be publishing more details of the nuts and bolts of this thing, won't you?
Yeah, I think, we sort of said earlier on, this case, today's hearing went on for a significantly long period of time. And as it was progressing throughout the day, there are a number of routes, and scenarios that could play out. We wanted to get information out to supporters as quickly as possible, but we are conscious that there will probably be a huge variety of questions that come as a result of that documentation. And along with the support from the rest of the trust board, everyone's doing a fantastic job at the moment. And also, the legal support that we get, we will be, taking a look through everything once again and just making sure we've got it all correct, got it all crystal clear. So keep an eye on the website, keep an eye on our social channels as well. And obviously, if anyone's got any questions, feel free to drop us a message.
There you go.
Fantastic. Brilliant. Thank you very much. And certainly from all the comments that have been coming through, everybody really appreciates what you're doing. So thank you again for everything. So
Pleasure. That's
it for tonight. Please keep an eye on social media. We will be back if there's anything to report or anything like that. But from now, take care and we'll see you again soon.